Greetings, greetings, and salutations. It's another edition of
Your show will go live in 5 seconds.
New Orleans Voodoo, Secrets and Recipes. Come on in. Come on in. The fires are hot. The waters are boiling. It's time to put something in this pot. Come on in. Welcome, 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 you revolutionaries, you practitioners, you healers, you readers, you powerful gods and goddesses, you spirits of the ancestors and the Most High. Come on in, come on in. We have room for one, we have room for all. Greetings and salutations. Thank you so much, Kevin Brooks, for showing up for me. Grand rising to you as well, beloved. Welcome, welcome. Our beloved Otun is with us today. Yes, beloved, greetings and salutations. Fix your face, girl. Yes. I see you. Big pretty smile too. I see you now. Come on in. Welcome, welcome. Come on in. It's another edition of Revolutionary Voodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. To my international audience who's listening by way of Blog Talk Radio, blogtalkradio.com/the-divine-prince. You can also call in an area code 845-277-9143, 845-277-9143. Please do remember to press that number 1 on your telephone keypad and be patient. I will open your mic momentarily. Welcome Facebook, welcome StreamYard, welcome Twitter, Periscope, welcome my EarthCam page. Greetings and salutations from wherever you are in the world. We acknowledge you, we welcome you, we greet you, we embrace you. This is a safe space for you to come and share and learn the power of this revolutionary Voodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. Do I need some light? I might need a little light. All is a blessing. Greetings, greetings. All is a blessing. Just a little bit of light. Greetings, Cheryl O. Welcome, beloved. Thank you so much for your attendance and your spirit, helping to bring that Iyami, the power of our great sacred women. We appreciate you. All is a blessing, beloved. All is a blessing. Yes. Come on in. Greetings and salutations, Dark Soul Jua. Grand rising, beloved. All is a blessing. Thank you kindly. Thank you kindly. We appreciate you. Grateful for you. JP Terrell, I love you. My brother, my friend. All of the above. Come on in. Come on in. Where is my LGBT community? Where is my Black revolutionary community? Where are my people? Where are the witches and the practitioners and the readers? Come on in. This is your space. Come on in. This is your stage. This is your mic. Come on in. Greetings and salutations. The code is 216. Good afternoon, beloved. Greetings, greetings. All is a blessing. Always humbled, honored, grateful when you take out the time in the middle of your day to be present here in this sacred space. Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. Alafia, beloved. Guinevere Reed, Hotep Wu, Assalamu alaikum, Ashanti Sana, Salome, and greetings and power to you as well. Habaragani, Bawoni, Kedu. Where are my Igbo brothers and sisters? Where are my Yoruba brothers and sisters? Where are my Ewe brothers and sisters? Come on, Akan, stand up for the Akan. We greet you, we honor you from wherever you are in the world. Iba, Orisha, Mojuba, Orisha. Greetings and salutations, for all is a blessing. Eshua Legwana Kosi Were, Awo Onluto Ni Iwo, Ada Afanbo Osi, Obatala Mi Ita Ni Ebo Onilio Abane Shu, Eshu is a respected elder who flogs, confronts, and uncovers fools. That one versed in mysteries uses truth to own you. He calls the scattered to feed poverty. Obatala shakes rascals to have sacrifice. The owner of warnings is the one who is Eshu. Aboru, Aboye, Aboshishe, Ashe. May I ever reach a rune. May I ever be accepted. May I ever allow what we desire to come to pass. And so we say, Ashe, oh Ashe. Greetings and salutations this Friday. I am so honored, grateful, humbled, excited to be here with you in this chosen, created sacred space that we have been building since 2008. First on the Blog Talk Radio platform, blogtalkradio.com/the-divine-prince. Please do subscribe, please do follow, please do like. I certainly would be honored and grateful for your participation. You can also call in my international Blog Talk Radio audience at area code 845-277-9143. I am broadcasting with you now live. Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, author, advisor, Elagun Oloye, Hoodoo Obeya Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective, understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is indeed my constant prayer, my mantra, my affirmation, reverberation, reiteration, and it is my ever-living reality. All is a blessing is crucial to the very foundation of my inner standing, my being, my walk, my work, my demonstration along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the Divine Prince, make sense out of all that we're challenged with, all that we're challenged with here in this earth plane existence on Mother, Father, Earth. And it is my personal place of power and inner standing. It is the place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe. I am again welcoming you, greeting you, inviting you to come on in to this sacred space. I am emanating and vibrating with you and for you now live, virtually, verbally, cosmically, quantum universally, from this working temple of the House of the Divine Prince. Thai Potions, Hoodoo Central LLC, in this beautiful, historic, most enchanted, some would say most haunted city in America, New Orleans, Louisiana, the land of my ancestors and those who came before me along this Hoodoo Obeya life path and journey, passing down the great Obeya stick, along with the knowledge of the life-giving herbs, roots, plants, rituals, spirits, and minerals. I wish to invite you to participate, to ask questions, to entertain us, to share your experience and your story. And I would be remiss to not now introduce my co-hosts and my cousins, my blood DNA cousins. First, I want to introduce the beloved Otun Ifamiwa. Please forgive me. Otun Ifamiwa, come on in, beloved. We certainly do appreciate you always bringing that Iyami and that mother wit and that power of being a Black woman. We're grateful for you. And you share your experience, which a lot of people are not strong enough to do. A lot of people are not empowered enough to do. A lot of people aren't standing in their truth to do. So we're grateful for your example. We're grateful for your words. We're grateful for your ministry. We're grateful for your energy. And we want to acknowledge you. I also want to bring my cousin, Oloye, Ifawole.
To everyone. Hope everybody is doing well. Blessings to you all. You know, we today is Oshe Shango. So with
Oya.
Oya, yeah, Osho, yeah, Shango and Oya.
And in Voodoo,
So
we say it's a red day.
Red Day, that would make sense. That would make sense. So we hope that Shango will clear away any and all obstacles from your path. That Shango will also bring righteous justice to you. Will also bring magnetism of that which you are desiring in your life. May it be a magnetism, magnet. You know what I'm saying, to you, and as well as such. May all the energy of Oya transformation, may you be the transformation, good transformation manifest in each and one of your lives today. So I look forward to going through the program with you guys today and moving forward. There's a lot of Ashe on me right now, so a lot of stuff going on.
Yes, it's a red day. Yes, I've been up, I've been busy, I've been moving, I've been bowing, I've been prostrating, I've been doing it all today. And so I feel you, cousin. I do indeed. We want to some degree, continue our discussion about ATR, African traditional religious systems in the Americas. I want to refine it just a little bit today about heritage and lineage, and how indeed that is important, how indeed that's a crucial building block to the foundation of our maintaining these traditions here in the Americas. Now, this isn't a discussion about cutting ties or excluding any part of the world where our people and these traditions can be found, for indeed they are a multitude. There are a plethora. We are everywhere in the Pan-African, Trans-African footprint, if you will. But I want to talk about us rebuilding, reconnecting to, re-understanding what heritage and lineage is, particularly in a time when we've gone through some decades of broken relationships, broken homes, the so-called myth of, the breakdown of the Black family, and so many people are not only moving away from, i.e. tradition, but are also moving away from organized traditions like the church, like politics, like the government, and so we hear, the phraseology of wanting to live, beneath the grid, or free ourselves from the grid. And one of the most powerful and empowering ways for us to do that is through, one, understanding heritage and lineage as it pertains to us as a people. First, always as a people, as an individual, and then as a people, but then how it affects us at that ATR level. The traditional religious spirit practice, how we keep that alive in the Americas, how we create and recreate that in the Americas. One of my elders told me that the Orisha, the Loa, only reinvented themselves on this side of the water, only re-evolved, re-emerged, recreated themselves to not only sort of recreate, a similarity of system on this side of the waters, but to also meet new needs, new, excuse me, new needs, new challenges that we as individuals and as a people have had to confront. I like to say I stand on result-oriented practice. Result-oriented practice. Mythology is great. Philosophy is great. Mentalism is great. Feel-good, positive conversation is great. The power of being able to draw what we want, what we desire, what we need to the world by that which we project out is great. But there's so much more that I've gained, and I'm sure many of my guests and visitors can share in this, that I've gained from actively being a part of these systems as a lifestyle, at the root level all the way on up. And yes, it was a challenge to, get away from my former evangelical Christian background. Not just the environment, but then the energy and the footprint that still remained on me. Yes, it was a challenge to open up communications with my mother and other members of my family where I could stand in my truth, represent who I am, but also had the words to explain that and to keep us close rather than divided, again, by politics, by religion, by belief systems, by governments. The traditional African religions or traditional beliefs and practices of African people are a set of highly diverse beliefs that include various ethno-cultural traditions. See, we like to say voodoo as a sort of a label or brand, but it's an umbrella word that represents a diversity of ethno-cultural traditions. We don't like to say tribe, so we say ethnic group, we say family. So various families don't all cook the gumbo the same way. Various families don't all prepare the holiday meal the same way. And so these practices and these traditions, religiously and spiritually speaking, became just as varied, but also as specific as the ethno-cultural community that's practicing the tradition. So you find voodoo in West Africa, you find various forms of voodoo in West Africa. Some people would say Akan practice is voodoo. Some people would say Ifa practice is voodoo. But you also see a differentiation in Candomblé in Brazil, a differentiation in Cuba and Santeria, a differentiation in Louisiana and Mississippi Delta voodoo and Low Country hoodoo. You find very specific differences that relate specifically to our life, our challenges, what plants, herbs, roots are available to us, what food items are available to us, and that then becomes the very specific traditions that many of us have grown up in and are now bringing to the forefront in 2021, 2022, and ultimately beyond. I said it in the last show, I believe. I'm not here to make a splash. I'm not here to, leave some footprints. I'm here to leave a path that my godchildren's children's children, that my nieces and nephews' children's children's children, that my brothers and sisters' children's grandchildren's great grandchildren's will be able to stand up in authority and in truth and be just as empowered as the many other global world religions that we acknowledge. I often say we are treated like the bastard child in North America. And I'm not just talking about in Europe or in China. I'm talking about in Africa, in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Senegal. Sometimes we're treated like the bastard child. But I think that is rooted, being a living bastard child myself. And I have a father. I mean, being thrown away, being kicked to the street, having to find my way, in the world. So being a representative of the bastard children, in the world. We aren't bastards. We have ancestors. We have tradition that we can pull from right here in the Americas. And for those, again, this is a call out to those who officially initiated into many of these traditions, the Akan practice, the Ifa practice, the Voodoo practice from Togo, Benin, from Ghana. Please grow that here among our people in the States. Develop that here among our people in the States. And let's, break the tie of codependency on other people for our own sense of validation. Generally, these traditions are and continue to be oral rather than scriptural. And so my godchildren have run into that, how many books can they read? How many authors can I, refer them to? And indeed, there are books out there written by Americans, written by Nigerians, written by Ghanaians, written by Egyptians. There are books out there for sure. But these traditions are still primarily communicated and expressed and shared orally. And so there's nothing greater than sitting at the elders' feet, sitting at the Awo's feet, sitting at the Ianifa's feet, sitting at the elder, the grandma, your grandpa, your great uncle, your great auntie, and absorbing their experience, hearing their stories. These practices under this umbrella of voodoo also include the belief in a supreme creator, belief in spirits and veneration of the dead and those who've gone on before us. Indeed, the use of magic in traditional African medicine. The role of humanity is generally seen as one of harmonizing nature with the supernatural. And so we have a foundation of tradition, and I've shared to the best of my ability over the last 13 years, books, documents, articles, sometimes artifacts, video, and picture of the reality and the truth of these practices being not only present in America, but not a memory, not a shadow, but something that is actively being worked right now today. According to statistics, there are over, and I'm not quite sure the number because it's much higher than the number I'm about to recite, but there are over 1 million voodoo practitioners in the United States. 1 million. Now they say it's how many black people? 30? Are they still saying 33 million? It seemed like they've been saying that since I was in high school. So that number can't be, correct. If somebody knows the correct number, help me out in terms of how many African Americans are in the U.S. right now. But 1 million is a lot of followers, a lot of practitioners, a lot of participants in the traditions of our ancestors. So we need to move these practices out of the closet where it can be done safely. I understand we got young people listening who still live with their mom and daddy, and that's a good thing. We have married couples that one couple wants to break free of tradition, the other is devoutly church, so I understand, we grow to levels of comfort in terms of coming out of the closet, for lack of better words. But we need to bring these traditions out of the closet, out of the realm of what's spooky and scary, and really put our foot to the fire and build these traditions in a way that, again, they benefit the community, the village, but also remain something that our children's children and their children can stand on, in the future. We need Iles, we need voodoo houses, we need temple space, we need offices, we need transportation. I'm 54 and never owned a car. Some of y'all think I'm wealthy or something. I'm never owned a car, and if you got one for me, I would gratefully accept it, But we've got to grow these traditions in a way that they're viable, reachable, reasonable, practical, and just as much as the other sources that people have access to in our communities. We operate not just in the realm of religion. I'm sure my cousins understand that. We do way more than religion. We do mental health, we do emotional well-being and check-in, we do personal ego and spirit building, we do physical activities, health, wellness. We look at diet and what we're eating and how we're feeding our communities. We look at housing. I've had to house some individuals. We do prison work. I have many, many incarcerated godchildren and clients. So we do more than just witchcraft. We do more than just, magic and ritual. We are a viable component to the community that is often not getting funding. We're not getting federal funding. We're not getting grant money. We're operating solely on the goodwill and the activity of those who have gained benefit from these traditions. And I say gain benefit because people who ain't gaining benefit don't stick around. People who don't gain results don't further support. People who aren't committed aren't committed. And so I'm talking about those who felt the energy of their ancestors. Listen, I'm so excited. I don't want to push it, Orisha, but I'm so excited about the day when Orisha and her husband, Chef Bougie, come on and talk about their experience, with me in this tradition, in this practice. their experience with the ancestors. I stand on the power of the ancestors. Before I started invoking Orisha and Loa and Abasan and Alusi, I stand on the power of the ancestors. It's the most mightiest thing that we have, that we possess, is that power of our ancestors that fought through, that first of all survived 3-day walk from within the continent. See, we think they just went on a beach and just grabbed a bunch of people. No, people had to walk sometimes 3-4 days, a week, out of the bush, out of the mountainous regions, out in the deep, unindustrialized regions, even for that time, of the country, and survive that. And then survive, being incarcerated, in a quote unquote slave jail, waiting for the mothership to come and get you and transport you, across waters. And then we had those who survived that part of the trip. We're talking about what, a month in the belly of a ship, maybe more. Hurricanes, storms, come on now. I live in the Gulf Coast. We just had a major catastrophe where many people lost their lives, on a huge, exotic, expensive industrial ship. So just imagine. And then you survive the being broke in, often in the Caribbean, often in South America, because it took a very special kind of skill to do cotton, to do sugarcane, in the US, to tolerate the brutality of enslavement in the US. So our ancestors had the power to survive. Our ancestors had the power to innovate. Our ancestors had the power to create and recreate a reality that mirrors our best interests. So I want to open the mic up to my cousins, and I want to invite you to please ask your questions, bring your comments and requests on both the phone lines, area code 845-277-9143. Please press that number 1 when you're ready. And you can also join us live here on screen by just following the URL link for StreamYard.
Well, I think that when we talk about this from the perspective of lineages, and I tend to begin that process by DNA. I begin that process by when we took, I know my cousin, myself, all 3 of us took DNA tests, and the DNA test at least gave us a basic premise of areas within West Africa that our blood, our DNA have been found. So when we're looking at Nigeria or Benin or Ghana, Togo, any of those areas out there in West Africa, knowing that predominance of the transatlantic slave trade was based in that area, then part of us working with our ancestors is to try to reassemble and try to reaffirm what it was that they were doing before the transatlantic slave trade. Of course, in some areas that we were taken from was predominantly Muslim. Some areas that were taken from, our ancestors were continuing the traditions. Some areas maybe had a little bit of Christianity in that were bought from the I don't like using slave masters, although that's what they were. Those that enslaved our ancestors and forefathers. So I tend to begin to look at the process from what was the possibilities of my ancestors in their spiritual traditions and practice. And now finding and seeing the areas of DNA and what maybe holds predominance in my DNA, it began to lead me to more study in those areas. So the more study then found Ifa, Afa, Fa as 3 of the predominants. And of course, the Voodoo and other traditions that are of different names in like Congo and different areas, they all have a root similarity. Maybe some use one opwele, others use two opwele, and yet there are others that use three opwele. And so in the practice, we begin to look and see maybe what we have the opportunity to learn. Maybe I didn't have the opportunity to learn Voodoo, but Ifa was presented to me. So in taking the step to Ifa, it's opened up the door to meet others in other traditions or from other areas, and allow me then to expand and evolve in my thinking, to look here and look there to see what our similarities are. Some of us look for big differences. Myself, I tend to look for what are the similarities. Maybe in one place the Odus are in the Odu Ifa is in this particular order, but this over here, the Odu are found in a little slightly different order, but it still doesn't take away from the binary code that is given to manifest that particular Odu. In some, the way that they read the seniority of the Odu might be different, but it still doesn't take away the information and the wisdom within the Odu. So a lot of that then goes to our lineage. Your lineage then will dictate to you, in essence, how your lineage views the study of Ifa and the stories and the interpretations of the scriptures of the Odu, and even in different ways that they might perform some of the rituals. And so when you find somebody from a different lineage or a different community, and they're doing things differently, we have to use wisdom and not say that they're doing it wrong, but then use our common sense to sit there and to watch and to study so that we can actually then learn maybe even a different format that we might be able to learn as time goes by. So when it comes to lineage from you to your elder, to your babalao or oluo, to their oluo and beyond going through, also invokes ancestry, of course, because the ancestors of that particular lineage as well, once you initiate, it's like you're adopted into that family and into that lineage, and those ancestors are with you as well. So just to give a little, hopefully a little understanding of the perspective of lineage, and even heritage, because once you find that your bloodline stems from those areas and you step back into those areas, Ifa says that when you do and you go into these initiations, it then allows you to connect at least 7 generations back. So hopefully that's a little insight to get started as well.
Oh yeah, I have a head full of questions and comments I could make right now, but I'm gonna allow Otun, beloved, please come on in.
Yes, I will say, well, Baba Oloye went is deep. Firstly, let me greet everyone. I'm back on just here and not the YouTube, so technical stuff, you know, I don't do that stuff, but I'm gonna get it eventually.
Yes, indeed.
But I want to greet everybody. Aburo Boye Boshishe, Divine Prince, Baba Oloye, and everyone watching. Sister Oryx, I see you speak to me all the time, honey. So I want to shout you out. Thank you so much for the love. I see you. I just can't respond to y'all. I'm sorry. But I love everybody and I appreciate it. As far as the discussion of this, I would say that as it has been presented before by Divine Prince, it's always good. It's always important to do ancestor work, ancestor connections, reconnections, because a lot of the times when a person is in a situation to where they're unsure of which way they should go spiritually, whether it's coming out of the church or Islam or whatever it is that you're currently studying, that if you feel a disconnect, as I did, coming out of the Christian church, my suggestion is always to go through your ancestors, because I remember to this day, and I still have the very first reading I ever had, my very first introduction to Ifa, June the 16th, 2016. I still have that reading to this day. I still read over it. Some of it has applied and still applies to this day. And it's a reminder. And it took that experience, which was through someone that I knew, that encouraged me to do that, because I needed to have direction. See, a lot of the times when we get to a point in our life where it's time for elevation, where it's time to make that move, where it's time to make that shift, sometimes we may not see it, or if we do see it, we doubt ourselves or we're unsure. And in the back of our mind, we have that westernized, that can't be what that is, because that's bad, or that's, you know. So I just want to encourage those and to understand that connecting with someone that can get you divination from a person of good character, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a babalawo, it doesn't have to be a voodoo priest, but just some kind of spiritual guidance, so your ancestors can be consulted. I had, in my very first reading, my grandmother on my mother's side, my grandmother showed up, and she was in the Baptist church, but here she was in this Baba's house. And I know she was there because, first of all, my grandmother's name was Oloye. You don't just pull that name out of hat. So for him to literally speak her name, and he was messing up her name a little bit. He was like, Oloye. He was like, I'm sorry, she's yelling at me. Like, she was checking him while he was trying to say it. And I'm looking at him like, Oloye? You don't just pull that name out of hat. That's not a common name. Not unless you're from down south. You know what? Everybody's a May or a G. But Oloye is not a common name for someone that you have never seen in your whole life to pull out of a hat. So I say that to encourage you to know that, one, connect with your ancestors. My first reading, when I got with my in my Ile, and I needed to know my direction, my father stood up for me. My father, I've never seen my father enter a church for any reason, ever. And he was not a religious type person. He did believe in a higher power, but my father didn't subscribe to anything. So for him to be popping up in Ifa readings, I'm like, okay, what's really going on? Through the research of my ancestral line, I've discovered that a lot of my ancestors had dealings in Ifa or voodoo, or, you know, different things. And for me, that's a blessing, and understands why I know I have that strong connection. It was misplaced for a little while, but at the same time, I needed that time. That's why I say, don't ever throw your base away. I needed that time in the Christian church. I needed that time to get comfortable with spirit, to get a basic understanding of the do's, the don'ts. What you're supposed to do in your specific path will come for you eventually. But that base, whether it was in the Christian church, whether it was in Islam, whether it was in Judaism, whether it was in what's them people that won't stop ringing my doorbell? Jehovah's Witnesses. It don't matter what form it came in. It is to prepare you for your elevation. DivinePrince always says all is a blessing. We need to look at the situations in our life as happening for us, not to us. Everything that happened to me in the church. And I say that me growing up in a Baptist church wasn't always peaches and cream. Truth be told, I can't stand none of them people. Those were the most gossiping. Like, I'm looking around like, how are y'all in church for 30, 40 years and you still a hot mess? But I needed to see all of that. You can't understand on what to do if you don't know what not to do. A lot of the negative things and the things that we perceive as happening to us is to teach us something. And if we're so focused on our emotion and being right and doing this and then doing that, we're going to miss the lesson. And that's why a lot of us have a lot of jacked up people and a lot of messed up circumstances in our life. We keep repeating those cycles because we hard-headed. We won't learn nothing. I don't care whether you are Baptist, a Christian, Islam, Ifa, Voodoo, Akan, whatever. Every system comes with protocol. It comes with purpose. It comes with rules. It comes with respect. If you're not willing to humble or submit yourself to anything, then you're not ready. Because part of that is total submission. There are going to be things you can't run from no more because they're going to be put right in your face and you're going to have to deal with it. And it's going to be hard. And sometimes it's just going to downright suck. But what you want to do? You want to heal or you want to be right.
Mm-hmm.
So
many of those words have been so corrupted, today: humility, submission, and we think the most negative connotations when we hear that word. We think about how those words have been used, often against us, and particularly against Black women, over the last few hundred years. But it's a whole nother thing when we're talking about humbling yourself to God, humbling yourself to the ancestors, humbling yourself to the process that's being created for you and around you and within you, really to get you to the place that's in your best interest. We say, well, I want to get to where I want to go, but often your ancestors are working to get to the place that's in your best interest. I like to say that, the illusion of an issue, a block, a complication is often being pushed by our ancestors to push us to the left, to the right, away from some person, place, or thing, to reevaluate some person, place, or thing. And it shows up as the illusion of, a block, a issue, a complication. And some people struggle with that in the beginning. Some people struggle with all is a blessing in the beginning. But when that light comes on, and the ancestors make that demonstration that you can't deny, or turn away from, those are some of the most loyal and committed people to these traditions, and then do find it easier to pull away from what's no longer benefiting them, what's no longer holding them up. I too remember those days of being in a Black Baptist spiritualist church. I do too remember the days of being in a huge mega prosperity ministry evangelical Christian church, and yes, sister, there was a lot of drama, a lot of gossip, a lot of backbiting, a lot of anger, a lot of jealousy, a lot of envy. And let's be clear, you find those things in Ifa, you find those things in Voodoo,
everywhere,
because you find people there. Wherever you find people, you're going to find a certain degree of imbalance. We like to say the reason people come to these religious centers, these spiritual centers, is to have that imbalance healed. But it becomes a problem when, the 12-step program uses this phraseology, war stories, where people just are repeating, the bad things that they've done, the bad decisions that they've done, and they become sort of part of your story. And there's a benefit to you telling it and retelling it and hearing it. And then you get stuck. And then that sticky, stuck spot collects other people that come and just need to hear those war stories and just need to be entertained by those war stories. And so there is a way of sort of blocking your own process, when we're too caught up in our own ego, when we're too caught up in our own flesh, when we're too caught up in our own sense of entitlement or empowerment. So humbling ourselves to God and to the Most High and to the ancestors and to the elders, I think is a critical next step from, getting clear about our DNA, getting clear about our lineage, finding out where we're from. I like to, take a little bit of pride in the system of determining ethnocultural tradition in my house. I do use Ancestry.com. I do use 23andMe. I do use a few other DNA tests that I personally have not taken, but many of my clients and my godchildren have. And so I take a little bit of pride of being able to, having created a bit of a formula and a process for being a little bit more specific about ethnocultural background and tradition. But I don't want us to forget that which is here, that is here. When we look to the Gullah Geechee, when we look to the Deep South, when we look to the Mississippi Delta, when we look to Georgia and the Carolinas, and then to our ancestors, to our elders, to our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our aunties, our uncles, our cousins, much of our tradition is embedded in what they do. They just don't call it by a name that we recognize. They just don't realize that it's a remnant from, a much more detailed system to include divination. We've moved from just palm nuts and cowrie shells and the opele that my cousin talked about, to stones and bones, to reformulate very complex systems of divination that allow us to look just not at the surface, what does it look like? But then we have to go in, like a professional and give an examination, run some tests, get some accuracy about, exactly where the root of a block, an illusion of a block issue, a complication is, and then move our clients forward, then move our godchildren forward. One of the hardest things is when I have to fight you for your own healing, fight you for your own sense of empowerment. And sometimes when we're in that sticky, stuck spot, we don't see clearly, we don't hear clearly. That's why having the ability to be humble and to be quiet long enough to hear from spirit is critical. We can drive ourselves into a place where we shut off our ability to hear and see. Depression has the ability to do that. Anger has the ability to do that, to shut off your ability to really hear that soft, still voice of God. And then when you don't hear that, your ancestors come rolling in, typically a little bit more aggressively as the illusion of the issue block in the complication. But once we get to that place when we can hear that and we can sit in that, that's the first great power, that I experienced, in this tradition. Otun talked about her first reading. Indeed, it was that ability for the elders to speak truth to things that we had not seen. Christians call that faith, to speak truth to things that were to come, and to bring empowerment to things that had already occurred, things from the past that went unsaid, that went unspoken, that went unexamined, that ultimately affect the bloodline, the heritage, the lineage. The conversation about voodoo, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know to what degree that conversation is still being had on either side of my family, and particularly now with the internet. I.e., they can see me talking about it every single day. So I don't know to what degree that causes them in their own private spaces, Chicago, St. Louis, Michigan, DC, California, to further discuss that. But I can remember growing up that it was a common conversation. And it was a bit of a battle. It was a bit of a war between those who didn't want to talk about it at all, wanted to pretend it never happened or it didn't exist, and then that portion of the family that thought it was wicked, thought it was evil, thought it was a bad thing. Today, we have space for those who are not just curious, but now have the ability to sort of tap in from the safety of their own home, from the safety of their own device and their technology, and really listen to us, but also see our demonstration. And I think the demonstration is more important than anything. One of you, I think, referred to it as character, not just going to a quote unquote reader, but a reader of character. I think Otun said that, a reader of character. That's important. And that's why I often seek the elders. I often seek those much more experienced than myself, much longer lived than myself, to help me to sort of navigate what I need to navigate each and every day, within the traditions. And my door is always open. Some of my peers find it to be problematic. I don't sleep a whole lot. I eat when I can. I handle my life when I can. But I don't have much of a quote unquote social life. For me, voodoo is my social life, and not just the ministry and the spiritual practice of voodoo, but the performance of voodoo, the educating of voodoo, out in the community, on media outlets. That's my quote unquote social space. And then, of course, the internet. So I feel grateful that even now, with technology, we've been given an opportunity to really grow the awareness of these traditions in our community. And people can see that there are people who are actively living in this right now, today, in this society, and it encourages others to make the same choice. I can't tell you how many families, not just the mom, the dad, the kids, but families I talk to every week that are looking for a way to move away from what everybody else is doing, family, friends, their peers, and move into something a little bit more ATR rooted. And their biggest concern is the conversation, is the demonstration. Well, what's going to be said when they, find my altars? What's going to be said when, they find out I'm burning candles? What's going to be said when they hear me, speaking Yoruba or Ewe or Igbo or Fan or Haitian Creole for that matter? What's going to be said? And that's often, in my experience, the biggest block. Getting the stuff is not a problem. Having the resources is not a problem. Willingness to want to learn it ain't a problem. Oh, but my mama might see this. Or the people I'm still going to church to, might see this. And that's one of the reasons I showed the video I showed from 10:30 to noon about voodoo. It featured one of my godmothers, Priestess A.B.K. Jones from New Orleans. But they went from West Africa to Haiti to Brazil, to the U.S., and that was discussed, in this film. The idea that this isn't wicked, this isn't evil, it is indeed a lifestyle that we live, that we breathe, that we bathe in, that we sleep in, that we get up and sit down in, each and every day. And so we've got to put words to it. We've got to make sure our children understand, because the children talk to other children. We got to make sure our family members understand. And we don't proselytize. None of us are here to cram voodoo down anyone's throat, to suggest that, you have to, initiate into Ifa. As the elder said during the video, we welcome the visitors, but we also welcome the family and those who find a family here and commit and stay here. And know that you are not, nor do you have to be operating in isolation. You are not, nor do you have to feel like you're the only person in New Jersey, of all places, that's practicing Ifa or voodoo. There are a lot of people in New Jersey practicing Ifa and voodoo, beloved. Philadelphia, Detroit, Los Angeles, Seattle, over a million. And if I'm not mistaken, I want to say it's 1.5 million active voodoo practitioners in the United States right now. So we need to come together. We need to meet in the middle. We need to befriend, in the flesh, but also virtually. We've all learned how to use Zoom now. I resisted Zoom until the pandemic. I resisted doing webcam stuff. Never did any kind of, other than YouTube and my own, cam on my phone. I resisted doing this kind of stuff before the pandemic. So it's changed so much about how we interact, so much about how we see ourselves, but also the world, and our accessibility to each other. And I've been saying this for years. Use your technology for greater accessibility to knowledge, to people who are in Nigeria, who are in Ghana, who are in Brazil. I love Google Translate. I talk to people all over the world using Google Translate. I don't have to understand Portuguese. I don't have to understand Spanish. I just need to understand Google Translate. Now I realize there are going to be some differences, so I often ask them to speak in a very elementary way, because I'm an American using Translate. Don't make it too complicated. You can't use street language. You can't, you have to speak in a sort of elementary way, but it can be done. It can be done. And we underestimate the amount of people all over the world who, if not speak English, or at least familiar with it. That the English colonial footprint is all over the globe. So you find people all over the world. I have listeners in China and places, Uzbekistan. Well, Uzbekistan don't exist anymore, but that same region, who are listening to the show. And I'm amazed by that. Cambodia, really? Thailand, really? Listening to this show? So people speak English, and people who are actively studying and practicing Ifa are learning to speak a little Yoruba and to communicate and understand, in Yoruba. So let's build a greater sense of community and not just continue to be isolated practitioners, isolated individuals, isolated family members. I'm grateful for both of the two of you, for being responsive, in the DNA platform. Some of y'all got your DNA test and you don't communicate with anybody. Even the people closest to you, meaning sister, brother, first cousin, but I've reached out third cousins, fourth cousins, fifth cousins, anybody who's willing to communicate, in a peaceful way, in a beneficial way. I've reached out to them on both platforms, and it's been very beneficial. And I now have new family members. I now have new community. I feel a greater sense of expansion, again, of the power of the Orisha, the power of the Loa, the power of God, to reach wherever she decides she wants to go, to remake and remanifest herself wherever she decides to go. And so I've seen video of people in China doing Ifa. I've seen people in China doing Voodoo. Not one black person in the crowd, Chinese people doing African tradition, and seeking to do it, legitimately to the best of their ability. So we've got to better embrace the reality that this is no longer fantasy. This is no longer what the TV and the movies and some of the stuff that I'm credited for, the horror productions. It's not that at all. And that we're here, and this is a lot of time and a chunk out of our day to be here to share our experience, to share our story. And we don't do it because we're getting paid a whole lot of money. We don't do it because we're becoming, famous, but we do it for you, and we do it for the expansion of the traditions in a real viable way. I want to address real world challenges that we face today. Our history that we stand on is great. Our past is great. Our mythologies are great. Our stories are great. But how they now help us to address the many challenges that we're confronted with today is my ultimate goal and purpose for providing this platform. So please, greetings, beloved Chef Bougie. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you so much, you all. And I invite you all to participate, to ask questions, make your comments, offer your request, and join us.
I will say that as far as the conversations, firstly, for anyone, if once you have your information or you feel like you have an idea of your path and the direction in which the Most High and your ancestors have pointed for you to go, I want to suggest that you get information. If you're following with a form of ATR, to get information on it, to be willing to understand who you are, accept your destiny, and stand in that. There is power in simplicity. You don't have to be the most knowledgeable, the most versed, know this song, that song. It's not about what you know. It's about your heart and how purely you are willing to operate in it. I had that conversation. I've had a couple of conversations with my mother and my sister. It's not that, and I had that same feeling of dread, like, what are they going to say? Are they going to have questions? Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to deal with this. And a lot of the times it's us doing it to ourselves. Yes, there may be questions, if at all. They may not want to ask you a question. They may want to ask you a question. A good thing to do is to have some information, factual information. So when and if that time should arise, you have good information to give them so they can know, no, it's not demonic. It's not about worshiping the devil or doing this or that. And you can actually give good information so they can at least know that you have a connection to the Most High. And it's not about following a trend. It's not about going with a fad. It's about you and your connection with spirit. And I say standing in that, because that alone is all you need. I had two different conversations, one with my sister and one with my mother. Initially, there was some skepticism on their side because it was unfamiliar, because of the stigma and the status, quo, and what, and the statistic of what they try to say ATR is, no matter the form. So we had those conversations, and it may not always be the way you want it to be at first, but you continuing your path, being positive minded, and you know what, continuing to pray for them before you get into the conversation. Pray for commonality, for understanding, for a meeting of the minds on the ground where everyone can be understood, and if not understood, at least respected. It made me feel so good, because you would be surprised. My mother, who I thought was just a minister, and it wasn't no way she was gonna this, that, or the third. It took her pulling me to the side. Well, actually, she called me up one day and she said, need to ask you a question, Eb. I said, okay, Mom. She said, I noticed there are certain things that I don't see from you on Facebook. She said, and I know you up there. She said, so I was just wondering why, and if this has something to do with Ifa. I was like, Ifa? She was like, yeah, does it have something to do with that? And I said, well, it does, because first and foremost, I will never do anything intentionally, subliminally, to disrespect my mother or make her feel uncomfortable. And I expressed that to her, because first and foremost, I'm going to respect my mama. And I wanted her to understand that. And if it means I keep her from seeing things that I feel would upset her or cause her to feel disrespected, then she just won't see it. And my mother surprised me and said, all I wanted was for you to have a true relationship with God. I don't have to understand it. She said, because I really don't. She said, but I see now that you have real relationship, and that this is something that you live in, not just walking and talking. And I'm proud of you. Don't you ever hide nothing from me. And I just sat there so happy and feeling so dumb at the same time, because I've been blocking my mama out when I could have just had a conversation. I could have opened my mouth, all because I psyched myself out, because I just knew that my mama wasn't going to listen. And sometimes the blockage is us. Sometimes we in our own way. So I want to encourage you. I'm not saying jump out and have that conversation if you're not ready. Pray on it. Talk to the Most High. Talk to your ancestors about it, but have the conversation that's needed. You may find that it may bridge a lot more gaps than it increases. So be encouraged, be bold, and be who you are, because they can't change it. At the end of the day, when you standing up in Orun and you looking back on your life, how would you feel to know that your whole existence was about doing what you thought other people would be happy? Because no matter what you do, somebody's going to be mad. So do you. Be you, authentically and unapologetically.
Ashe, Ashe. That I need an applause button. I keep forgetting to add applause to my soundtracks for this show. I had the ability to add sound, and I just keep forgetting to add all that. But yeah, you couldn't have said it better, and it mirrored to some degree my own path, my own experience in terms of, you know, introducing, in some cases reintroducing these traditions to people within my family. Probably my most negative experience as it relates to voodoo was with a family member. And this was a family member who once upon a time wanted readings and wanted help, you know, controlling her boyfriend, and, you know, wanted help in, you know, in gambling. And when she didn't find success in those areas, or in the way that she thought it should look like, or her own karma in many cases came back home, the chickens came home to roost, then she demonized the whole tradition. And she blamed Eshu and me to some degree for introducing some kind of demonic spirit into her life that caused certain things to come apart and to fall apart. And this was, oh wow, this is before I moved to New Orleans. This was back in the 90s maybe. We don't speak till this day. Till this day. And it's interesting because she and Wapani live very near each other, and they don't communicate much anymore either, because the cousin feels that if she don't communicate with me, my own sister shouldn't communicate with me either. And she doesn't communicate with my mother, her great aunt, you know, I mean, her cousin, the way that she, you know, she should. Because again, they have accepted me, have embraced me have come to understand, what it is that we're doing in this space. And so being able to articulate where you are in your journey. It doesn't take titles, it doesn't take big words, it doesn't take you really understanding, everything 100%, but being able to articulate where you are. Same person call every day during the show. When you start to articulate who you are, people eventually grasp that, understand that, and they either learn to respect it, visit, but be respectful, or they become family, at a much deeper level. Now you're not just blood related, but now you're also spirit family. And for me, that's the power of this trio right here on screen. We know we have set blood DNA connection, but it's the spirit family that's really uniting us at a deeper level. For me, it was just, I don't even know if shocking was the word, to see Oloye, Ifawole, Oladeji, Ifatande on my DNA chart, and other Yoruba names and other, African-based, languages. I even have some relatives that have Korean names and have some Asian names, and some Middle Eastern names. So, there are so many things that create family other than just blood. And Oloye, in his way, expressed that when he talked about lineage, not just being your blood tie, but then the path, the system, and their way of doing things that you ultimately adopt and commit to, and become a part of. So there are many ways to establish heritage and lineage. I'm sure the Mormons consider themselves, having a heritage, and a lineage based in that religious system. So we need to move this beyond just, memeing about it, posting pretty pictures about it, wanting to be seen because we got Ilekis on. If you notice, I never wear Ilekis. I have them, but I never wear them, out of respect, for, what the Ilekis represent, but also for the community. And again, how we demonstrate these traditions. It's not a piece of fashion jewelry. It's not something you wear to sort of draw other followers in, into your TikTok. Yeah, I'm on TikTok now. I got a video that's got 300,000 views on TikTok, by the way. It's a second line on my block here in New Orleans, but I digress. But we need to move beyond just, making it look fashionable, as Otun said, making it look like it's the trend, and really have it be a part of the bread and butter, for those of us who still eat bread and butter, the dynamics of how you build your family, yourself, your family, ultimately your friends. I have friends who don't practice E5, friends who don't practice Voodoo. I have friends who don't practice, traditional African religion, but then I have many who do. And we interconnect at the second line. We interact in Congo Square. We interact at the Tomb of the Unknown Slave. That was something else I want to discuss in terms of heritage and lineage. Sacred spaces. Sacred spaces. I understand the importance of the sacred spaces of Olotunji. I understand the importance of the sacred spaces of Togo and Benin, the waterfalls of Haiti and Jamaica. But we too have sacred spaces here in the US. And so we utilize the Mississippi River. We, where the river meets the ocean. We utilize the swamps. We utilize the wetlands. We utilize the marshlands, and the product, the vegetation, of those various terrains that bring something to our healing, to our diet, to our magic. I got a pot of coffee on, y'all. I'll be right back.
Okay, I would like to say that also we have to understand that, yes, a lot of things originated in Africa. A lot of things originated in parts of Nigeria, Benin, wherever you want to go. But as DivinePrince also said, there are a lot of traditions here that are rooted in the natives that come from here. A lot of people have to understand, although a lot of our ancestors was caught up in the slave trade, not everyone had ancestors that were slaves.
That's right.
Our people traveled the world, mapping the stars. They may have stayed in some places and decided to live there where they were trading or what have you. And then you had the mixing and intermarrying and all of these things that was going on. So you have to understand that. Don't dismiss the connection, the power, and the things that came from this land, because our ancestors cried here. They bled here. They birthed here. That has an effect, a lasting effect on the soil. A lot of people don't understand that this earth, with this plane that we live on, is alive. Look at the soil, look at the trees. Some people even say water itself. I know I speak to my water before I drink it. The very organisms that we interact with is alive. Look at plants. There is a reason why what we exhale, they inhale, and what they exhale, we inhale. Yin and yang, reciprocity. Everything is connected in this cycle. So in knowing that, we have to understand that there's power here. Nothing was removed. Nothing can be removed. Do not dismiss your roots. Do not dismiss your base. You will miss a blessing and you will miss a step on your walk thinking this is how it should be, or that was wrong, or this was wrong. And I see a lot of that happening. That's how I can tell when there are new people in their discovery, in their journey, because they're coming out of there and Jesus wasn't real and this and that, and I don't believe this and I don't believe that. That's a brand new mind. You haven't been around long enough. You need to open your mind, hush your mouth, and learn, because you don't throw your base away. That's throwing away. You wouldn't throw your ancestors away. That's your base. That's the core of where your power emanates. How foolish and prideful of you to do that. We have to understand it is a lifestyle. It's not a fad. You will see the results, but you are required to do the work. This is not Harry Potter. There is no Wingardium Leviosa. It does not happen like that. You got to work to get it. Everything in life you get that you love, that you really, really enjoy, is going to be because you poured your heart and your soul and your effort into it. I'm not here to try to push you to go one way or the other. I love you as you are, where you are. I want you to be your authentic self, but I want you to figure out who that is. I challenge and invite you to do that. My sisters too.
Yeah.
Do that. And then the real work begins.
Yeah, and that person you just described, I smile because I recognize that person. I saw that person coming out of church, brand new, thought they knew the entire Bible in 30 to 90 days, and they ready to take over the church. I saw that same person in Islam, among the FOI at the nation, sitting under, oh my goodness,
Minister Farrakhan.
Yeah, Minister Farrakhan every Sunday, Mas Miriam. And I've seen that same person in Ifa and in Voodoo. That they got that new car smell, and it's in their demonstration. And then they bombard my DMs, with books that I read 20 years ago, with books that I've read 30 years ago. And what do? You encourage them, you applaud them. Oh yes, beloved, that's good work. Keep up the work. But, they really think they're teaching, the elders something that's brand new. And that becomes a part of the challenge as well, that sort of a generational back and forth thing. Each generation comes to innovate. Each generation comes to do a new thing. Each generation comes to improve something or evolve something. But you got to understand where you are first in its fullness. Many ethnic groups in West Africa don't consider you a mature individual until you're 35. Here in the West, we got 16, 18, 21. You still a child among the Maasai at 25, at 26, at 27. So until you're 35, that's when they have the shaving of those dreads among the Maasai, the Turkana, southeastern Africa, Kenya, that region. They shave those dreads at 35. to represent you now becoming a mature adult. And if I'm correct, they can't marry until they're 30 among the Maasai. You have to be at least 30. So the idea that, you know, we got it all down, it's a very Western thing. This ego that I've had to talk about in the show, in the chat, I know it ain't you, it's not you. It's a Western toxin that all of us to some degree have picked up. But when we realize we've picked up, we work to exercise those things from our behavior, from our conversation, from our language. And I'm sure my cousins, my co-hosts would agree with me. You know, coming into these traditions is not easy. I'm not suggesting that they got the gate barred, but I'm suggesting that learning a new culture, learning to humble yourself a little bit, learning to be quiet so you can hear what you need to hear. Many of us in the West have to relearn that from a West African perspective, or even an Asian or South American perspective. There's an arrogance that comes with being an American that many people around the world do not like. You know, that there's a negative thing about control and what we want and what we need and luxury that really grates the last nerve of many indigenous people around the world, particularly when we show up talking about we coming here for spirituality and religion. And so one of the first things we have to do is forget what we know. Now, I had to do that the hard way, you know, as a suicidal teenager on the 33rd floor of my building, 5th Avenue, 110th Street in New York City, dreaming about jumping off the balcony. God spoke to me directly and said, are you willing to forget everything you think you know? I don't care what pastor said it. I don't care what Bible said it. I don't care what mom and daddy's. Are you willing to forget everything you think you know and let me show you something? And I thank God I said yes. I said yes. And it was from that moment that I couldn't hear gospel anymore. I couldn't even hear holiday songs, holiday references, holiday music, anything that tied me right back to that old way of sort of seeing things. But in that newness and being humble, I was able to absorb languages, cultures, traditions. Sometimes I would just go to the library and I would close my eyes and just pull a book off the shelf. You know, I choose a section, you know, and I just pull a book off the shelf and I would read it from cover to cover. You know, I would digest that information so that when I went out into the world, I'm now encountering, you know, they say when the student's ready, the master teacher will come. Now I'm out in the world, sometimes in the street, sometimes vending, selling incense and oil and whatnot. And now I'm rubbing shoulders with people from Senegal, people from Ghana, people from Jamaica, people from Haiti who are also living, quote unquote, outside the grid, who are also selling produce or handmade items, you know, and had other gifts, talents, skills, music, instruments, writing. You know, that's where my world really opened up. And I was operating in a cocoon. My mama said I was operating under the anointing, you know, but I was operating in this cocoon of protection on the street, sometimes up all night, you know, with people with deep accents from other parts of the world. And they were impressed with me because I knew something about their language. I knew something about their country. You know, I've got a gift. I can look at many Africans and tell you exactly what country they're from. And sometimes I can tell you exactly what ethnic group they're from. That's an act of witchcraft to them, coming from an American, a Black American. Like, how you know that? You know, you've been to my country? No, I've never even left America, beloved. But my love for the culture, for the tradition, for the people runs that deep. And it has run that deep since I was in elementary school, since I first started running the hallways of the Smithsonian National Institute Museum, you know, in Washington, D.C., where they represented ethnic groups and cultures. And I could be in Japan for a few hours. I could be in China for a few hours. I could be in Ghana for a few hours. I could be in Egypt for a few hours. And I just absorbed that information. So there's nothing wrong with the reading of the books. No, you can't initiate into these traditions reading a book. No, you can't fully understand these religions reading a book. But there's power in reading the books. I tell my clients and my godchildren, read everything, even the foolishness, read it all. so you know one from the other, so you get a better understanding of the world that we're operating in. That's what I had to do. So I had to go through many books, you know, way back to Santeria Experience. That book was written in the 70s, you know, and it stuck with me. And as I walked my journey, as I encountered people from these various traditions, I knew what to throw away. I knew what wasn't important anymore, but I knew how to then identify the meat in the books of these authors who often are writing about our culture, our practice, our tradition from the outside looking in. Very few write about it from the inside out. Now, there indeed are a lot of Nigerian authors, but many people don't know how to access those books unless you have a connection to some Nigerians. I know Araba Elababoon keeps a great deal of books coming into New Orleans. And so I can go to that community and I can pull from Ifa books written in Nigeria by, you know, Nigerian, you know, authors. But that information is what made, you know, the student on the journey looking for a teacher. That's what made that magnetism. I think that was the word you was looking for, cousin. That's what made that magnetism work. And so the people that I needed just started coming to me, just started giving me things. Sometimes we quibble over, you know, over initiation costs. I got a lot of stuff for free. I don't say that out loud a lot. I got a lot of stuff for quote unquote free if you're talking about American money. But the hours that I spent crocheting, the hours that I spent beading, the hours that I helped pack up their incense, the hours that I helped sitting outside with them all night so they could take a nap, and I watched their table until they woke up, that paid off in training. That paid off in wisdom and knowledge, and it paid off in implements. Some of you have been in my house. I've got some spectacular stuff, some unusual stuff. I've got some stuff that people who've been initiated in these traditions for decades sometimes lose their breath when they see it. Oh my God, how did you get that? You know, and so I had to humble myself. I had to surrender, you know, not to a person per se, but to my willingness to want to change my destiny, change my road from where statistics and society said I should have been to where I know I was meant to be. And so, man, the gifting continues. I've got Nigerian godmothers who are doctors in America with degrees and PhDs who fly back and forth to Nigeria 2-3 times a year. The stuff they bring me is overwhelming. Sometimes the clothes, asantahines, I mean, just drums, some of the stuff they bring, it's just overwhelming. I've got frankincense from Ethiopia and Egypt that I won't even burn because it's that precious. It's that precious. Some of it look like citron crystal. It's that clear and it's that precious, but it's from Ethiopia. It's from Egypt. It's from, you know, Somalia, you know. So we've got to learn to surrender to the universe. Surrender to the universe. Humble ourselves to the universe. Otun said that. Stop thinking everything is happening to you is happening against you, and start change your perception of what's happening for you. This is happening for me because, or so that I can, or so that God can, or so that the ancestors can make something that mirrors your best interest come into fruition. And sometimes
part of it is destiny. I mean, we all have a destiny that we've come here to fulfill. And even going through some of the initiations, it begins to open up to reveal what your destiny is. But your destiny also, it starts opening up in your life experiences. So sometimes we absolutely do not understand why things happen in a way that it happens. But there's a power in your submission. When we look at the definitions to some of the spiritual traditions, many of us don't even know the definitions to some of them. When I ask a lot of people who are very hard on Islam, what it is that Islam means, they don't know the definition. So therefore, when a Minister Farrakhan says that by the very definition of Islam, we are all Muslim, people take arms. But yet, when we look at the definition of Islam, the submission to do the will of God, then we all submit ourselves, especially if we're in a spiritual practice and a spiritual leadership, we're submitting ourselves to do the will of God through Ifa to manifest in our lives in the way that our destiny, or we went to Olodumare with our destiny in the fulfillment thereof. So therefore, from the very definition of Islam, submission to do the will of God, then we can all be considered Muslim, one who submits himself to do the will of God. If we humble ourselves to submit to that which God is presenting in our lives, however he chooses to present it in our life, the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, everything that we have to go through in our life, we know that the story is being built and our testimony comes through the test. So when we give a testimony and we have the experience to back the testimony, there's power in our words. There's power in the experience.
Ashe.
So, good.
No, I want to respond to the chat before I forget. Nas Media, African Diaspora Academia. Tell us the creation story that you accept. That's a great question. Now, I will say, again, I've studied many cultures, many ethnic groups. So there's similarities from the Mayans and the Aztecs, you know, to deep Asia, to Africa, to Egypt. There are similarities in the creation stories. So I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to put it in plain English, and I'm going to sort of tell it, you know, in my own words, from my own perspective. We came from the sky. We came from the sky. Science backs me on that. Quantum metaphysics backs me on that. Mathematics backs me on that. Even down to our water came from the sky, possibly from, you know, collisions with objects in space that then subsequently deposited water here. That's science. So I believe that we came from the sky. We were seeded here by a higher evolved entity. We can't say humanity because that would be of Earth. So I can't avoid using terms like extraterrestrial. And when I say extraterrestrial, I don't always mean alien. Again, our imagination has kind of created this picture of what an alien is. But extraterrestrial. Egyptian culture, Meroe culture, Ethiopian culture, again, Aztecs, Mayan culture, Olmec culture, all suggest that we were seeded from somewhere else and were the first inhabitants, if you will, of the planet. Now, when we look at biology, and I did a show on this the days, brother, where I talked about other hominins other than just humans, you know, your Neanderthals and some of the other forms that existed on the planet before, you know, humanity came to be prominent. There had to be some interference, some intervention, some involvement there from something beyond our world that caused us to sort of escalate as a species and develop all the godlike characters that humans now possess. And again, I think that's supported in the stories of the ancient world in many ways. I also believe that they came from the sky. Those that come that are the newest on the planet, but archaeologically wise, they're the newest on the planet. Their origins are still, you know, a bit undecided. Some say Yaku created them in a lab. You know, others say that they, you know, that they again came from the sky, maybe from a different form of extraterrestrial than who we are. I mean, I can go real deep with this, and I can even suggest there's some kind of battle in another part of space, in another part of the universe, that caused them to now seek a new home, and they chose here. And at some point, we intermixed. But that idea of supremacy, which eventually developed into racism and white supremacy and many forms of prejudice, I believe is rooted in the idea that we have very different origins on the planet. And now we're intermixed, we're all mixed up, you know, and this greater sense of ownership is being fought out somewhere outside our physical domain of reference. I also talk on this show, beloved, about us existing in multi-dimensional spaces at one time in order for this reality to be what we say it is. Again, that's science, that's math. So there's a reality that we're all existing in right now that mirrors our best interests. Hopefully you're living in it right now, and it's not just in your imagination. There's also a reality that we're all existing in right now that gives us fear, that gives us trepidation. You know, we don't want to be homeless. We don't want to be without resources. But somewhere in your mind, in another dimensional space, that world is real. And our goal is not to bring that into our present reality. That's why what we think is so important. And the more you assume danger, the more likely danger will present itself. The more you presume prosperity, the more likely prosperity is to present itself. So we evolved as separate families, as separate entities, as separate ethnic groups. Even their Bible talks about, you know, the great flood and the need to wipe out, you know, giants and other supreme or superior beings that were not supposed to mate with Earth humanity, but somehow mated with Earth humanity and created these various forms that, according to their Bible, and to some degree the Quran, had to be wiped out or had to be removed, you know, during the course of the flood. So I think there are many sources, both religious, spiritual, and scientific, that kind of support my theory that, you know, we came from the sky, from the planet to us as living, breathing beings. As Otun said, the whole planet is alive. Every part of it, you know, is alive, and every part of it comes from outer space. I'm going to add that part. And even now we have nanodiamonds and stardust, you know, falling onto the planet from outer space every day, you know, in microscopic form that we all just can't see readily, you know, without a microscope or scientific, you know, discovery. I believe that ultimately we will end up somewhere else. Now, who will survive to end up somewhere else is a little bit question, because now they're trying to wipe us out, even though we are 3/4 of the planet, Black people, people of color, but they're doing their best, you know, to sort of genetically, biologically, scientifically, you know, take what's best from our genes. That sounds like extraterrestrials to me. Take what's best of our genes and save them and then harvest them for a new humanity. The Bible references a new humanity, a new world, a new kingdom, and get rid of what they see as a virus, what they see as a problem. Now, part of the mystery of that is, you know, what side are we on? Whose team are we really on? Farrakhan used to teach that the extraterrestrials were coming for us and that there was a mothership that circles the planet. Have y'all ever heard that? You know, Farrakhan used to teach that a lot. And so I'm not the only one, you know, in the quote unquote conscious community that has accepted the reality of extraterrestrial intervention, involvement, you know, on the planet and how we have developed. I also watch a lot of documentaries, a lot of documentaries. So anything from what lies at the bottom of the sea, what's unknown about our planet, you know, the idea that, you know, there's absolutely something underneath the ice caps, you know, at the Antarctic and the North and the South Pole, you know, quite possibly a civilization long forgotten. The notion that there was once a superior race of people. When we look at, you know, the Olmec heads, when we look at the Great Pyramids, you know, when we look at the great temples all over the world, the notion that there indeed was either contact with something God-like, quite possibly extraterrestrial, you know, or the possibility that humans had actually, you know, recreated themselves and were God-like at one point in time, you know, in our past. And I accept that we self-destruct every, you know, few million years or whatnot. The Hopi suggests the earth has been recreated at least 4 times. Many indigenous cultures talk about the earth being recreated at least 4 times. So, you know, it's not hard for me to envision a reality where we indeed have some connection to something greater than ourselves that has been misinterpreted as God, that has been misinterpreted as, you know, some great religious superpower, you know, that has now fueled humanity to the place that we are and exist in today. So that's kind of my idea of the creation story. If you have other questions for me, or, you know, or critiques, I'm willing to accept that. But I appreciate you. Yeah, New York City. I learned a lot in New York City, beloved. New York City is a city. It's 2 cities in one. It's multiple cities in one, and it's a journey. Yeah, this is my favorite place. If I can afford it, I would live in New York City. Manhattan, of course. I would have a nice place in Manhattan. I would still live in Louisiana. I would still live in Treme, but I would be in New York City at least 3 or 4 months out of the year. And I'd have some high-priced property that I would lease, you know, while I'm living in Louisiana on this economy. You know, I'd let somebody else support that economy. Yeah. We have about 20 minutes for your question.
DivinePrince,
Yes, please.
a small, minuscule piece. You need to burn some of that frankincense from Africa and release that into your house. Even if it is a small, minuscule piece, you need to burn some of that frankincense in your house. Inhale it, get it in your skin, get it in your walls. Burn some of that in your house.
Don't get me wrong, beloved. I have.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, don't hold that. I know it's precious.
Yeah,
Shoot,
Mama
you better let that go.
and a few other people brought me some. So I have some that I burn.
Yeah.
What's the word? Infrequently. Because I don't burn it a whole lot. I have some that I burn all the time.
Yeah, it's strong. It's strong though.
That I can get on Amazon and reorder. But the good stuff, I limit my usage to it. You know.
Okay. I was gonna say, you never burned it, just a little piece. You gotta get that in.
Yeah, I have some that I've never burned. I have some that I've had since '85 that I've absolutely never burned. But I believe it's just as powerful in its resin form. And then I have others that are fresher, newer, younger in age, and I burn that. But I'm going to acknowledge you, Mother E.I. I'm going to do that today. I'm going to take a piece that I've had since the '80s and shave just a little bit off, and I'm going to burn that.
That's right. Get your prey on. Breathe that in. Watch. You're going to love it. 85. Wait a minute. Did you say 85?
1985. I graduated high school in '84. Yes, ma'am. That's That's another, you know, powerful voodoo in my life. I've managed to hold on to a lot of stuff since kindergarten. You know, I have stuff that belonged to my grandmother, you know, quite possibly her mother, you know, and listen, I've moved, I've been in and out of U-Haul storage centers, you know, so I'm not unlike many of you listening to me, but I've been blessed and I've always managed to hold on to my stuff, you know. So yeah, my mom describes my place as a museum. I held on to some stuff.
That's all right.
Come on, y'all, join the conversation. I feel like I'm doing way too much talking today.
It's been quite quiet today. Y'all come on and speak up. Don't let us sit here and do it all. Y'all going, yay, that's right. Come on, tell some of your stories and share. Don't just sit in the background. Get up in this light and get that work.
Yes, and Orisha, if you get the right frankincense and myrrh, it's also edible. Yeah, it's also edible. And there was a time that a gum was created in the ancient world from it, and people use it as a form of chewing gum.
That's interesting.
Yes.
You know, a large part of what you say in terms of people's journey, there has to be sometimes some research to find the direction that you want to go. And, you know, inside of the African spiritual traditions or the African traditional religions, there's so many diverse perspectives of ways of things being done. And we could have 2 or 3 houses in the same block and everybody doing and practicing something different in regard to even the same orisha. Some might practice Obatala in this way, but come to my house and we're practicing Obatala this way. And then down the street, they're practicing yet another way. So I think that people might really need to do more looking into some things before they even make the final decision. I do believe that a lot of times the tradition is calling us, but that since we have no reference point for it in our growing up, we don't know how to make a really good choice or decision on which way to go and how to then make it a part of our everyday life. And so I think it's important that now that people have some elders, it's out there more, but they have elders like you and Otun that are on here. Reach out and ask a question so that it allows for a good choice and decision to be made to see what fits into your maybe perspective or the way that you desire to practice or to study or to you know, the journey that you want on a spiritual level. I believe that when we're called to do something, when we're called to the particular tradition, we might have a fallacy of what it could be. You know, I know none that have gone into it have really looked at these levels of chieftaincies, because still we don't even have full reference points for all of the levels of chieftaincies, you know? And so all of the thing that we go into it for, hopefully, is to improve our life and to heal. Some of us thought we were healed, but yet when we are faced with something that draws or triggers some of these things out of our lives, then we find out real quickly that we're not really healed. Sometimes when we're dealing with a situation and we think that somebody else is healed, we see that maybe they're not fully healed. So now we can't look down upon a person because we find out that what we thought for them wasn't true. Now it's our point to show grace to them and allow them to go through their process, because our destiny and their destiny is different. But we got to now find out what is it that's in our destiny that we are going to enter in this tradition, and we're going to grow and live this life honoring the energy, the Orisha that is within us. It is the true essence of Namaste. The divinity in me is honoring the divinity in you, or the divinity in you to honor the divinity in me. We're trying to, we're reaching each other on another level when we're doing that, when we're dealing with that. But yet, many times when we find people in a tradition, unfortunately, it's that clash rather than the intertwining. So we have to look at what is it that we want out of this tradition? What is it that we want out of our journey in this tradition? And then we can find which one, whether it's Voodoo, whether it's the Louisiana Voodoo, whether it's Ifa, Afa, Fa, whether it is whatever the case might be, whatever it is. And then not allow us to think that we know without actually going into the research just to find out. We have to use the reference points that we have. You're an encyclopedia. Iya, now she's growing in this tradition very strongly. And so it is to now go to those who have at least a knowledge and a ability to say, all right, this is this, this is this, this is this. Which one do you think fits in best with your, with your, you know, with the direction that you want to go?
Sure.
And when you secure a foundation, you know, you've done your homework, you've paid your dues, you know, you've practiced for some years, you know, the ancestors, the Most High might call you to, you know, create a new path. But you got to understand, you know, the foundation, you know, before we can just jump in and create something new. Again, I want people to understand that the foundation are already here. The people are already in place. You know, some people acknowledge Olatunji. Some people acknowledge, you know, the Gullah Geechee Nation, you know, which has practitioners, elders, you know, has an ethno-cultural system in place, you know, right here in America. So, you know, yes, you find what's comfortable in terms of a student and learning and humble yourself to the process of learning. And if indeed God called you, the ancestors called you to create something new, create something different, at least you'll then have the skills to apply to do so, and to do so, you know, successfully.
It is true. And I also believe a couple of things. One, we can't practice in the way, in the actual manner that they do in Nigeria, Benin, Ghana, anywhere else. Right. There's certain things that in our laws, it would not be looked upon in a good way. And although that court case happened in Florida, there are still, you know, things we have to be mindful of. Ifa wants us to be able to follow the laws of the land as well in our practice, and to also be mindful of those people who are our neighbors. We don't want to make our neighbors to be uncomfortable because people are doing certain things or throwing certain things away, that now a certain smell and all of that, and bugs and all of that, because we didn't take care of doing what we needed to do appropriately. So we now have to view this tradition in the divine essence of what it is, and in the core of what it is to make this these traditions work like they do back home. But we also have to be open enough to know that there might be some different things we have to do, but yet not fall away too far from the core that is still going to allow it to manifest in the way it's supposed to. So we have to be very mindful of what it is that we're looking for. You know, when we're speaking to our brothers and sisters back home in the motherland, we have to take into account that the view that they're sharing with us is the view of Africa, unless we had some that have traveled here, maybe have gone to college, university, whatever, and now they do have the experience. Even in the way that we do readings, there's some differences because of our experiences in what we are, having to deal with here. So when we look at certain things, our view of looking at that verse or interpreting the verse, it is sometimes a little bit different in the perspective of the way that we do readings. The way that even we go through the categories, of the Aiku, the long life, full life, and Ire Age and Ire Aya and Oko, the Ishegun and Bogbo, and then on the opposite side you have Iku and Arun, and then Ejo and Eponjo. The way that we look at these categories sometimes now, because of our experiences, of course, in living this life in this culture, we look at the categories and we can maybe look at it in an expanded view, because now we know this person could be going through A, B, C, D, and E. And some of those things are not reference points out there. Many times having conversations, many don't really know the significance of Ma'afa, of the transatlantic slave trade. So therefore, to them, that is that break. They don't know of the middle passage. So we have to take into account and show even grace there, but yet understand that maybe, just maybe, we have to honor those Babalaos that did the work, that are here and now have done the work to now go inside of the tradition to kind of bring it back up, to bring it into this fashion where the understanding is from an African American view or an American view, for us to be able to interpret things, to even talk to you and resonate within you that much stronger. So just sharing that, the journey to these traditions, they can be very diverse, but know what you want, know what it is that you're desiring in your heart and in your spirit from these traditions, and that then can lead you. So be intentional in your prayers, be intentional in the thoughts of what you want out of a godfather, or a God, a godparent, out of an Ile, out of a temple, out of the tradition as a whole, so that when you walk in, you're walking in with your eyes open, and this fits what I'm looking for, or this I might want to regroup and find another. Know if you want traditional Isese, know if you want Lukumi, know if you want Santeria, know what it is that you want, because there's differences. In Isese, we don't do warriors, but in Lukumi and Santeria, they do warriors. So therefore, if you're looking for warriors, Isese is not going to do warriors. You're going to do Ishefa, and then find, the Babalawo is going to say, okay, this is what Ifa says. Now, this is the appropriate Orisha that you might want to receive or initiate into. So in knowing these small things, it's the small things that are really the big things. And when you can know these things, you can make a wise decision. You can be a wise consumer.
I think knowing what they are is critical.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that, just in the last 5 minutes, you used some words that some people listening to us have never even heard before. And that's why, for me, it's important that, we demonstrate that this is a lifestyle. It's not like just going to the fortune teller and looking at your love life and, how do I fix that? We're going to look at your entire life. We're going to look at your entire body. We ain't going to just look at your love life. We're going to look at your health and wellness. We're going to look at career and education. We're going to look at the dynamics of your relationships with your elders and your children, and quite possibly your spouses. It's a lifestyle. And my preference would be, that everybody who contacted me was really trying to practice this as a lifestyle. Mm. This was really an extension of their life, as opposed to, the tourist that just wants a curiosity you know, a look into our culture, you know, just for a moment. And that's fine too, you know, but be respectful as a visitor, and understand that you're visiting into a cultural ethno practice that's more than just tarot reading and fortune telling and palm reading. It's our lives, you know, if you will. So that would be my preference. You know, I don't turn anybody away. If people seek help, I help them. If people want, you know, a look into things, you know, we do divination. But I take a lot of time in the process to explain that, you know, there's certain things that your ancestors are calling for from you now. There's certain things that the spirits are calling for from you now. And quite often, and particularly in this dispensation we're living in right now, 2021, they're really asking us to do a new thing, to do an old thing, but to do it in a new way. To do a new thing, meaning to stop doing what we've been doing for the last 200 years that may not be getting us to the goal. And there are many tools that we've used, you know, during the 400 years that we've dealt with enslavement here in the Americas, you know, and in time, you know, you replace a tool, or tools evolve and you get new technology. And now you have a new tool, you know, so we have to be willing to, you know, again, humble ourselves to spirit and be willing to grow and manifest this practice in a way that's practical, reliable, in some ways current and accessible, you know, and as my cousin says, without necessarily, you know, creating a wave, you know, depending on where you live. It'll be real easy for me to say y'all need to flee them cities. It would be real easy for me to say that. It wouldn't be the right thing for me to say, but it would be real easy for me to say, you know, y'all got to get out of them cities and get to where you got some land and some vegetation, and if nothing else, a yard, you know, with a fence or some trees around it. You know, there's a great deal of what we can do within the tradition, you know, in these country, rural, southern, western areas, you know, that you can't do in a Chicago high rise. You know, what would be real difficult to do in a New York City, you know, high rise. And it's one of the reasons that I eventually moved south. I wanted to be around more of my people, literally and figuratively, but I also wanted to be able to operate in my tradition and have the space to operate in my tradition without worrying about my neighbors, you know, or a landlord or the land management, you know, what y'all doing, you know, what's that smell, what y'all got going on over here. You know, I don't have to deal with that at all in New Orleans. And even as my cousin referenced, he didn't say the word Hialitha, but he's talking about that legal case, I believe it was 1993, where they had a problem in Florida, you know, with animals being discarded improperly, creating situations that were not cleaned up properly, because as he said, there's a protocol to all this. Oloye said it, Otun said it. There are rules to this. No, we don't waste animals. No, we don't just, you know, violate animals for the sake of violation. And so they ended up having to go to court. The state of Florida actually enacted laws to prevent them from practicing Santeria and Lukumi for a minute. And it was overturned, and it was, you know, found in the federal courts that by right of religion, I know some of y'all don't like that word, by right of religion, they absolutely had the right to act in the way that they were acting. But it's got to be done appropriately. And again, when you have novices that think, you know, I read a few books, you know, let me kill a chicken.
90 seconds.
You're creating real bad energy for yourself, for the animal, for the people around. And we don't just discard animals. Often in voodoo, you know, that food is eaten, that food is shared, that food is disseminated throughout the community. It has just now been prayed over.
That's right.
For you church folks, it's just been prayed over.
It's like kosher and halal.
That's right. At the same
Kosher
time,
and halal.
60 seconds.
Yes, we've removed the blood. The blood has been used and fed to the spirits in the most appropriate way, you know, and then the flesh also has, you know, its purpose, you know, within these traditions.
It's more to just killing an animal and making it a sacrifice. People have to understand this is why training is needed. This is why it's good to deal with people of good character, to make sure that they are not only know what they're doing and doing it correctly, but they are doing the animals the justice and the service that they deserve. Because it's not just about killing an animal. You have to know the manner in which it is done, because if it is done properly, you will not only receive the blessings, you will bring something on your behind, and it's going to take a whole lot more killing to get off. So make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you know who you're dealing with. Stop doing internet baths and this internet spiritual work, because that's what you're going to get, an internet demon jumping all over your behind, and then you're going to have to reach one of us to fix it. And I'm going to tell you right now, I will redirect you to my cousin Baba Oloye. But I'm not, because we have to learn to operate in this thing. It's all, you know that saying, everybody's seen Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. You have to be mindful of how you approaching these spirits and know what you're doing. We all seen the horror movies. We know what happened when it's not done right.
Or done
be
over
mindful, be respectful.
Yeah, or done over some foolishness. Yeah. Anthony X, I am Hoodoo Obeya Bokur. I am the authentic New Orleans voodoo priest. Witch doctor is an extension of my black masking carnival Mardi Gras position. Black masking culture is a whole nother dynamic to ATR that is specific to New Orleans. So Indians got witch doctors, the Zulus have witch doctors. It is specific to our culture here in New Orleans, and primarily around black masking. So when I mask at indigenous, I'm witch doctor, medicine man, in that vein, and in that role, I bring the medicine to the black masking community. We bless the streets, we bless each other. As you should know, being from Louisiana, masking Indian once upon a time was a very volatile tradition, and so they prayed just to ensure that everybody made it home at the end of Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras was illegal for black people. Masking your face was illegal for black people. So there's a whole bunch of inherent risk, even till today, that exists within the symbolism and practice of black masking culture and tradition. Witch doctor has also been used in a negative connotation by Hollywood movies, book authors, people who know very little about indigenous culture or voodoo culture for that matter. When the early archaeologists went through Africa, the Congo, everything was the witch doctor said, the witch doctor did, the witch doctor brought healing. And just like the word witch, which I'm still not entirely comfortable with, it's a word that is used in Nigeria. It's a word that's used in Ghana in association with Iyami and other very specific powers within the tradition. So like always, it's about usage and who's using the word.
Be mindful. Be mindful of labels. There is no primary. He is of God. Just because there are many facets, many areas of study, there is no box to put the Divine Prince or any of us in. There is no primary. We serve the Most High. He transcends all religions, practices, spiritual systems. There's no box. Don't look for one. There's no way to define a person's walk. You don't have that authority. None of us do. Be mindful.
Ashe. And I'm also a minister. Okay. And I'm a healer. And I'm a musician within the tradition. I'm a performer and a dancer in the tradition. Sometimes my role requires makeup. Sometimes my role requires 2 years of sequencing and beading, and feathers. So yeah, again, Western culture, tries to put us in a box, give us a title, give us a label, give it a brand, you know, to sort of reduce things down to its common denominator.
And yes, Anthony X, you can be all of those things, every last one of them.
Now, bro, you claim to be spiritual. I want you to feel the energy. Because somehow you think it's just me. And I've been quiet, but some of the sisters don't feel your energy sometimes the way you come in the room.
No, not sometimes, right now. Right now, I see it, I feel it. And just because you are so weak to put it in words on a screen don't mean it ain't real. That's no bueno. And I feel it. And you gonna stop now. Anthony X, just so we're clear, I don't want anybody to think I'm directing this anywhere but you. Stop it.
Listen, I say hell has no fury like Iyami scorn. I don't cross black women. I don't upset black women. I don't try to offend black women. And when the queen speaks, I listen. I'm going to shave that frankincense. As soon as I hit in this broadcast, Queen Otun, I'm going to shave that frankincense. Okay, my oldest, most expensive piece, and I'm going to burn it. Because I humble myself to the power of Iyami. I humble myself. Are we at 2:05? Oh my goodness, I missed the time. Cousins, would you like to give a peaceful exit? Would you like to close us out?
You want me to give the benediction, eh?
You should.
Because after the EI meeting spoke, I don't know what to say right now.
May we all walk with Iwapele, Iwarere. May we all be at peace with ourselves. May we all look for the transformation in our lives that Yeye Oya can bring to us, especially on her day of worship. May Shango bring us the healing. May he bring us peace, but may he bring war against anyone or anything that's meant to do harm to us or anyone that we love. So we offer you all peace and blessings as we leave today. May Ifa continue to bless you. May Louisiana Voodoo continue to bless you. May all the traditions and spiritual systems of God truly bless you and keep you all as we leave here today. Ashe.
Ashe, Ashe.
I can only save you once. I hope I never have to save you again.
Pray with me. Don't
listen, I've seen the power of Iyami. I don't mess with it. I just don't. Like you said, from my mama to my grandmama to any woman, black woman that I encounter, I don't seek to ever get y'all on the wrong side of the energy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm humbled. I'm humbled. I'm gonna follow your instruction. I'm gonna smudge my frankincense and myrrh as soon as we get off of here. And I look forward to everybody coming back again, including you, Anthony X, at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time next time for another powerful rendition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Otun, do not disappear. Do not disappear. Stay right where